I just can't wait. Sure, whatever. Whatever. Well, hello, and welcome to an unscheduled part two of today's Ed Talk. I was doing my presentation earlier here live on TikTok. Thank you for being there, those of you who were. And I was talking about Ontario and some beautiful architecture and a philanthropist doctor who helped out the community. And, well, this here is what happened last time on Ed Talk. Well, this just happened on that live, guys. Live access suspended, and well, I did already go and say, hey, why would you do such a thing? And it said for misinformation. Can you believe it? Are you satisfied? Oh, we've allowed, repealed, and restored. Oh, we appreciate it. Yeah, I'm very, very satisfied. So I'd like to say that. Maybe I can go continue my live. I think I should. I think I should. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for sticking around. That's for sure. Well, I'm going to go back and finish my presentation. We're just getting to the train. Well, this just happened on that. So, that gentleman there is a timeline that was thought about. Welcome to my live, guys. I am doing a part two after being banned, but I appealed right away. And they took away my live privileges, my privileges to go live here on TikTok as Ed Talk recorded live in front of a studio audience on TikTok, and then full episodes on YouTube. And we will be having a part one and part two. And I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be a nice guy, talking about the architecture, about Doctor in Ontario, and trains, and the orphanage that he built. And he built an orphanage, trains. Today's part two is continuation of trains, but in light of me being flagged and banned and violating, although successfully appealed, mind you, very quickly, yet part two is a different chemistry. I was, so to say, trying to be nice. I was doing it the nice way. So you don't want to hear any curve? No outside the lines? Well, let's talk about the truth and what we know is the truth. Okay? Let's take a different direction to where I was interrupted, and that was the trains. Because we know that trains was a transportation method for the children in the orphanages. That's all, you know. And this gentleman had an orphanage on an island. Part one will be connected in the links, of course. Check out part one if you haven't checked out part one, and thank you for stopping by my channel, Edio Knows. So, what I'm going to do is use Perplexity and develop some spreadsheets about the railway systems in Canada and their development, and North America too. I'm sure will settle in nicely to that time. I already know some things about the railway, and I'm going to be using two AIs. I'm going to be using Copilot to chat with, because
let's delve into the key milestones of Canadian railroads and piece together the historical journey. Ready?
Oh yeah, I was just telling them that we were going to talk about the railroads. If we can get a thumbs up in the chat, if you guys can hear Copilot,
I'm
that'd be
here.
great.
All right, let's dive deeper into the Canadian Railroad story.
Yeah, remember you were gonna ride with me, and we were gonna figure out what kind of questions we wanted to build to Perplexity for our timeline that we're going to develop of the development of the railway systems in Canada. You know, we know some things about the United States. Where I am from, I know the Transcontinental Railroad was constructed in 6 years, and a lot of it was in towns like Seattle and New York and Chicago, and they had big railroad stations in the late 1880s. What does that sound right?
Absolutely. The late 1800s saw major rail expansion in cities like Seattle, New York, and Chicago. For Canada, we could look at how the Canadian Pacific Railway and, later, the Canadian National Railway played pivotal roles in the country's development. What aspects of the Canadian railroads intrigue you most?
Well, the timeline. You know, when was the first? I think we should ask Perplexity. Let's work on what we're going to ask Perplexity to build our spreadsheet around. How about the actual train stations, like Penn Station? What year was Penn Station built?
Penn Station, the original one, was completed in 1910.
All right, that's not a good example because it's not in Canada, and I want to kind of stay in Canada. How about Ontario? What year was the major railroad station in Ontario constructed?
Toronto's Union Station, a major railway hub in Ontario, was officially opened in 1927. Want to focus on how this station and others impacted Canadian development?
Yeah, I'm thinking like the railroads were constructed in the 1880s in the United States predominantly, right? Is that accurate to say? So in Canada, do we have the same timeline of the development of the majority of the railroads in Canada?
You're on track. Canada's major railway expansion also ramped up in the late 1800s, with the Canadian Pacific Railway being completed in 1885.
All right, now we're talking. So what railroad stations were connected to that?
In Canada, key stations like Toronto's Union Station, Montreal's Windsor Station, and Vancouver's Waterfront Station were pivotal. These connected
so you already said Toronto 1927 for a station, so that must have been a second railroad station that was constructed. We have to focus on original train stations before 1900, we'd say, constructed in the 19th century. Railroad stations or like crossings, how do we phrase this correctly, in Canada and we'll just say North America, in the 19th century, railroad stations? I bet we could get a list of like 10 of them easily to start with, right?
Absolutely. Let's ask for a list of significant 19th century railroad stations or crossings in North America, focusing on Canada, but also including key U.S. stations from the same era. Ready to dive in?
We're going to start a spreadsheet, and we're going to make the first column railroad stations or crossings that were constructed in the 19th century in North America. And let's start with a list of 10. And in the second column, the year they opened up. And in the third column, how about their original construction date? We're focusing on the first ones built, not like the second or third, like original ones, and they have to be built in the 1900s. Start there. So there we go. This live, I am gonna hit some facts. So here we got a beginning of a spreadsheet. And you're gonna hear, if you are listening to this at some point, I'm going to just be asking tons of questions at this thing. I'm not really even focusing or listening to the answers. I'm just going to be developing it in a way to think and keep this conversation open here. As I got my other guy here. All right, man. He made that first one. So he got 1830. So we got Baltimore, Grand Central Depot, Union Station, Promontory Summit in Utah, Reading Terminal. He's already got a whole bunch. 1899, 1829, 1907. All right, we'll deal with that. Baltimore, Ohio. Yabba dabba doo. That was 10. No problem. So let's try and say what? Bring it up to 25, you think? Easily? What kind of categories for the columns? We want to know years constructed and how long construction took. But we're trying to get answers towards the actual construction of the railways, but we're trying to work like distances and make a logistic it has to answer.
All right, let's list out some key columns. Year of construction, construction duration, total distance covered, major cities connected, and maybe even the types of cargo or passengers they primarily served. What do you think?
Well, we'll say, major cities, years of construction, obviously, the name of them. Maybe we should say like the architect. They'll have like a main architect, right?
Great point.
All right, I'll start with that right there. All right, hold up, bro. All right, hopefully you guys can hear everything all right. Thank you for stopping by here live on part 2 of Ed Talk. I got shut down on my first live, but I appealed my banana and it let me come back on because I was spreading false information about, and I wasn't. So now I'm just going with truth, and we're doing a little cold Eddie Talk. So watch me work if you enjoy this. Thank you very much for stopping by. And thank you all for being there. All right, so let me see. All right, that's good. We're going to expand this to 25 train stations. The columns are good. Let's make the first column the city, the second column the name of the station, the third column the dates of construction, the fourth column the architect in charge of the construction. The fourth column will be its major connecting city where it goes to. Its next column will be its major shipping export. I don't know. All right, so let's see what we got here to look at. Hopefully you guys can see this all right. All right, you guys can read that, I hope. Good to see you guys. Jill, thank you. I appreciate the gifts. Appreciate everybody. Thank you for stopping by. Joining me here in part 2, my cold Ed Talk. It didn't have to be this way. But now I'm just going to hit you with facts for a while, and I'm going to get it, baby. Watch how this works. Click to the end. Time links are in the comments. All right, so what are we looking at here? Years of construction. Unknown. These are not chronological. We want these chronological, probably, right? And with AI, they people like you. All right. Unknown. All right, city. That's kind of a lame category. Yeah, ideas for categories there in chat, guys. So we do have some architects here. All right, so we are at 25. Let's just expand it to 75. Oops, I'm not meaning to do that. And these are free applications that I'm using for demonstration purposes. All right, we got pretty good. It's at 25. I'm gonna ask for 75. That's reasonable to move it. Or should I just go for 100? Probably 100.
Yeah, aiming for 100 would give a more comprehensive view.
Yeah, why not, right? All right, listen up. I'm gonna just read it. Don't respond to this. All right, so that looks good. Get rid of the final column with its export or import what it carries around as a train. Let's add this list. Instead of 25, let's move it up to 100. Double check your information, cross-reference with archives and search engine, and then duplicate this and make another Excel spreadsheet and then compare the two of them and see if they align.
Got it.
All right, that's what I told this one, the other AI, to do.
Got it. Sounds like a solid plan to ensure accuracy. Ready to move forward with it?
All right, it can do it. So now it's telling me, yeah, that's what I would like to do. 25 at a time, or you want the entire list? Well, just say do the entire list, right? What are you talking about?
Just following along.
Do the entire list once and see what you get.
All right, let's roll with the entire list at once.
Not you. You're not doing this. You're just watching me watch this. Do you want to watch the screen, Copilot? I can turn your goggles on.
No need for goggles.
Goggles, your lenses. Copilot has this. You can see the screen, you know.
I appreciate the offer, Ed, but I don't have a way to view screens or use goggles. I'm here to chat and assist through our
cool. Lighten up, buddy. Lighten up. All right, so how are we doing here? I'm going to add we got a bunch here. Union State. Look at all these Union stations. Look at Union. Oh my God. The Union was a force to be reckoned with. Yeah, all right. We got a lot of unknown architects, right? We got the year. So let's see. Oh, this was a nice name.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want to click to the bottom. All right, yeah, it's cruising. We're cruising, bro. Just all right. We're cruising, bro. We're cruising, bro. All right, that's good. It's too much for right now, though. Let's make the first column the numbers 1 to 100. So the second column will be city. Third will be station name. And then the column next will be years of construction. And let's leave it at those categories right now, leaving out the architects and major connecting city for the moment, and work on that list 1 through 100. And let's do them in the order of chronological order this time.
That approach makes sense. Focusing on the essentials first will streamline the process. How's the list coming together?
Well, do you have any recommendations?
I'd recommend double-checking the years of construction for accuracy and completeness, especially for stations with lesser-known histories. Ensuring...
I know there's a lot of these just like 1 year for the construction, and I know a lot of these actually will say like 1 year, but we're getting 100. That's not really the point of this exercise right here. So we have 100 different ones. All right, I'm not going to read that right now. So I'm going to ask it to double check, like you said, right? I feel you. So we'll okay, double check that list and make sure there's no duplicates. Use my internet archives, libraries, museums, city town histories, records, newspapers, microfiche, and make the list more accurate and tighten it up. All right. All right, well, that's doing its thing. So let's talk about some of the timeline of the United States about the construction of the railroads. I, from Irish heritage, was always told that the Irish helped build the railroads. Right here, the list is verified by multiple archive sources, including Internet Archive collections, historical railroad records.
That's right.
Archives. All right, so would you like me to prepare a verified list in Excel for you, or would you like yada yoo-hoo, DDD, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to ask it, how...
The Irish played a significant role in the construction of railroads in the United States, particularly during the 19th century. Many Irish immigrants found work on the railroads, taking on dangerous and labor-intensive jobs. Their work was crucial in building key segments of the railways, like the first Transcontinental Railroad, which connected the east and west coasts. It's a fascinating chapter of Irish American history. How does that resonate with you?
Would it be very simple to make this list 200 or even 300? Is 100 pushing it? Do you know what I mean? I want to get as many on this list as possible for research, scientific teaching reasons for the high school kids. No, 100 solid, blah, blah. Can we make it 2? Yeah, possible. Some caveats. Oh, what a great word. It wants to gradually expand. Da 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 da. Well, that's just how to do it. Well, put your best foot forward and let's make that list 200.
Summer is here.
Oh.
It's time to plan your style
Oh,
staycation
yes. Well, let's
with Discount Furniture, where you can find everyday low prices on the hottest styles. The comfiest Consumer Reports recommended mattresses. Fast, friendly delivery.
put on some 741 hertz and throat chakra energy before this live to get some truth. So I tried to be nice. All right, so how are we doing? Do we get this? Oh yeah, here we go. Sending forward. Da, 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 and we'll let it generate some more. Hey, can you tell the story of when they resized the railroad tracks in a very short time and they changed the gauge of a long distance of railroad tracks? And like,
That's a reference to what's known as the Great Gauge Change or Break of Gauge. One notable event happened in the southern United States after the Civil War. Different railroads had different track gauges, which created a lot of inefficiency. In a remarkable feat of coordination, many southern railways converted to a standard gauge over just a few days in May 1886. Crews worked around the clock to adjust the tracks, and it was a pivotal moment in standardizing the rail system. Fascinating, right?
yep, buddy. That's why he's just my buddy to swing around with his co-pilot. I ain't checking the internet all the time for me like this guy at Perplexity, but let's be specific. Thank you guys again for being here. My name is Ed. So I get my focus and say. So what I'm thinking about doing is getting the train stations prior to the year 1900, and then at least between train station to train station, get those distances, right? Let's ask ChatGPT straight up out the gate, see if it can give us a straight up answer. Hey, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up?
Can you give me an answer to a question? It's about the railroads. How many miles of railroad was constructed in the 19th century in North America? Take your time and give me an answer.
In the 19th century, North America saw a massive expansion of railroads. By the end of the century, around 1900, more than 250,000 miles of track had been laid. This includes the growth of the U.S. and Canadian rail networks, with the United States having the most extensive
When you say
system. The railroad
250,000,
boom was crucial for the
excuse
industrial
me.
expansion of the continent, tying together cities, facilitating trade, and contributing to westward expansion.
All right. When you
It
say,
was a truly transformative period, marked by iconic projects like the Transcontinental Railroad
well,
in the
excuse,
U.S.,
yeah.
completed in 1869.
Well,
That one alone stretched over
how was your
1,700
day?
miles.
That's good.
The era was defined by
What'd you have
rapid
for
growth,
lunch?
innovation,
That's
and the
great.
challenges of building through
I
rough
enjoy
terrain.
hearing you. When you say, what did you say, 250,000 miles of track? What years are you putting that between? Or did you say 25,000 or 250,000?
Ah, thanks for the kind words. I said 250,000 miles of track, and I'm talking about the period from the early 1800s up to the turn of the 20th century. roughly 1820 to 1900. This was the era of massive railroad construction,
All right, so
driven by the
can
Industrial
you? All right, so
Revolution
in 80
and the need
years,
to
all right,
connect
fair enough, fair
vast.
enough, fair enough. That's someplace to start. ChatGPT thinks that. All right. How's your math doing today, buddy?
Feeling sharp as ever.
Oh yeah, because I just was told by ChatGPT that 250,000 miles of railroads were constructed, installed in the United States between 1800 and 1880. 250,000 miles. Why don't you check out your answer? See if you get that. I'm not saying she's right. I'm just saying that's what she got. Thanks, Chris. Nice to see you guys. Holy Spirit in the house. What is your answer? I'm just playing.
The claim that about 250,000 miles of railroads were constructed in the United States between 1800 and 1880 seems to be a significant overestimation.
Yeah.
According to historical records, around 93,200 miles of railroads
Ooh.
existed in 1880,
Yeah.
and roughly 70,400 miles were added during the 1880s, the peak of railroad expansion. Thus,
well, okay, let's say the 100-year period between everything constructed in the railroads in North America forever ago up until the year 1900. That's the number I'm looking for.
the total rail mileage in the United States reached about 254,000 miles by 1916.
Oh yeah, that's what you were saying. Let's ask all the chat GPT. We're gonna ask everybody right now. All right, everybody, can everybody hear me?
All right, what are we asking everyone?
Yes,
Let's
I
get the
can
whole
hear
crowd
you.
involved.
All right, guys.
Yep.
We got three open voices.
What's up,
here.
Eddie? What's the big question?
Hey guys, we're gonna have a conversation. I'm talking to three people right now, and also you specifically. They don't know that. Okay, so how many miles of railroad tracks were constructed before the year 1901? We're looking for a final answer, and why don't you tell me how you're going to start to develop your answer?
I would start by
I'll
looking
start
into
Got it, Eddie.
historical
checking
records,
historical
So you're
data,
government
asking,
reports,
how many
and
miles of railroad
railroad
tracks
industry
were
archives to
constructed
gather
before
data.
1901?
This would include
Then
And you
accounts
want to
from the
know the
19th
thought
century,
process behind getting
documenting the
worldwide
expansion of
before that
I'll start
railroads
by
year.
looking
across
into
North
key
America.
Search for
periods
this
of railroad
I then
information to get an
synthesize this
accurate
info
like the
to
answer.
birth of
provide a
major
reliable
railroads in
estimate.
the
Oh my
US and
goodness.
Europe, such as the Transcontinental
Okay,
Railroad,
let me
Seems like
proceed.
there's a
Stop,
completed in
everybody stop.
1869,
Everybody quiet.
and European expansions throughout the 1800s.
Quiet.
I'd focus on major milestones and check how many
silent.
miles were
All
built
right, I'm
by the
here
time
when you're ready to
1901 rolled
continue.
around. I'll dig into the historical context and start adding up the major tracks laid during that time. Let's see what numbers we come up with. Give me a moment to get the answer lined up. Before 1901, the United States had built about 163,000
You're
miles
the only
of
one
railroad
talking
track.
still. Thank you, other guys,
This
for being
rapid
quiet and
expansion was
mindful.
key to the nation's growth, connecting cities
Got it.
No
and
problem.
I'm here.
boosting the
I'm
economy.
here to help. Let's continue whenever you're ready.
Oh my goodness. You guys hearing this? Are you experiencing? It's Hey. Oh, we already have the Perplexity. You know what? ChatGPT has a problem with not letting you, how many miles of railroads were constructed before the year 1900, by the year 1900 in North America? Final answer. How many
By the
miles
year
of railroad tracks were
1900,
constructed
over
before the year 1900 in
195,000
North
miles of
America?
railroad
Final
tracks
answer.
were constructed in North America.
Final answer.
Yes, the final answer is that by 1900, more than 195,000 miles of railroad tracks.
What was the total amount when it got to 250,000 miles of railroad tracks were finished? I keep hearing that number.
The milestone of 250,000 miles of railroad tracks in North America was reached by 1917. This reflects the rapid expansion of the railroad network during that period.
Yes, and of course, I want to stick on the railroads, but the trolley tracks that were in the individual cities, did those trolley tracks generally go to other cities, or were those contained city exclusives usually?
Trolley tracks were typically contained within cities and used for local public transportation, while some interurban trolley lines
All right,
connected.
back to train tracks. And these train tracks are going to train stations, and all these train stations are underground in tunnels, and it's all finished by 1917. And the big boom that, let's talk about the boom then between what, 1800 and 1888, 1880 and 1888?
The period between 1880 and 1888 was a time of significant growth for railroads. The expansion was fueled by industrialization and the need to connect cities and transport goods efficiently.
Yes.
Railroads became the backbone of the American economy, with rapid growth in track mileage, technological advancements, and the establishment of major rail hubs across the country.
I bet that they used the train tracks to like build the train tracks and like went a little further and then, built some more. And, uh, you know, if we try and do a simulation of these events, what is the most noteworthy event? I have to assume it's the Transcontinental Railroad of 6 years. What's a comparable coast to coast railroad I'm not considering perhaps in Canada?
The construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway is a comparable event to the U.S. Transcontinental Railroad.
When was that constructed? When? How long? What years between? Take your time. I like your style.
The construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway began in 1881 and was completed in 1885. It linked Canada's east and west, playing a crucial role in the country's development.
And what was the other one?
The other significant railroad was the United States' first transcontinental railroad.
What was a
It was
more impressive feat of labor?
both the Canadian Pacific Railway and the first transcontinental railroad in the United States were impressive feats. The Canadian Pacific Railway had to overcome challenging terrain and climate, while the first transcontinental railroad faced similar challenges across the United States. Both projects required massive labor forces, and it's hard to say which was more impressive, as both were monumental achievements.
Yeah, I was doing northern North America and Canada, and snow. The snow, the weather. Um, for railroad construction specifically, I think that cold would put a big stop. So, how long? United States transcontinental was 6 years. How many years was this Canadian comparatively?
The first transcontinental railroad in the United States took about 6 years to complete, from 1863 to 1869. In comparison, the Canadian Pacific Railway took about 4 years to complete, from
And how much longer or shorter is it in miles? Just answer the question.
the Canadian Pacific Railway was slightly longer at about 2,980
And
miles.
they built it in 4 years, and it's made out of the same rails gauge of steel and wooden parts and spikes, iron spikes, and such as the Transcontinental Railroad. Is that safe to say or assume?
Yes, it's safe to say that both the Canadian Pacific Railway and the first Transcontinental Railroad in the United
Did
States.
the years of construction overlap?
Yes, the construction years of the Canadian Pacific Railway and the first Transcontinental Railroad did not overlap. The first Transcontinental Railroad was completed in 1869, while the Canadian Pacific Railway was constructed between 1881 and 1885.
Yeah, that's how many months out of the year, especially at that climate, is winter affecting construction compared to the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad latitude? Like, how climate affects, is that an extra month that's taken off of their work availability for the year? 2 months, 3 months? How many? All the months? Is it snow there all the time? Is it year-round snow there where that railroad is? And if there is also a second part to this question, is there another railroad that goes coast to coast that's more north than that?
Winter weather, especially snow and cold, significantly impacted construction schedules for the Canadian Pacific Railway. Work availability was generally reduced during the harshest winter months, leading to delays. However, the exact impact varied by year and location. As for other coast-to-coast railways, the Hudson Bay Railway in Canada, which reaches Churchill, Manitoba, is more northerly than the Canadian Pacific Railway.
That's great. How long did that take to construct and in what years?
The construction of the Hudson Bay Railway began in 1911 and was completed in 1929, with full service starting
Yeah, that sounds a little different. What was the Siberian Railroad constructed? What years? The original one? Oh, man.
The Trans-Siberian Railway was constructed starting in 1891 and was mostly completed by 1916, although some sections were finished earlier and
Yeah, these old railroads always get you because let's just take a look at some images like that. Early 1800s photos, railroad construction, North America. Let's see if we notice if it looks like, oh, what's that? Oh, yeah. Railroad construction photos, North America, 1800s. Sure. All right, so let's just look and see what it looks like. I have been working on the railroad. And just zip right along here until I find a photo that sells my story. Because I don't really know what I'm claiming. Am I claiming that these were reintroduced, these railways, these railroads? I think that trains were already already made too. Yeah, had some good no training trains, but we can zip along. We don't have too much evidence of actual construction photos, so why don't we try and tailor down a search for such a thing. Construction photos, black and white, North America, railroads, original construction photos. Say it twice because I'm all about it. And, you know, worldwide internet. Maybe my internet is very censored, but let's go down a path and unusual looking picture. This looks railroads in the Civil War. Oh, maybe this can lead us down an interesting view, because we're certainly going to find some evidence of uncovering railroads in excavating like cities. Wouldn't you need a tape measure to do this? Like, this is construction, like this is the construction, or is this the digging out? The train was ready to go as soon as this tracks were built. Train was already like on its way, right? Who are these guys in the background, right? Dick and Harry. So right down all the way in the back, right back in the corner. It's legit. Where are the big pieces of the rails themselves, the actual tracks? They brought the tracks by train. These fellas. Tank, 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 tank. These are construction photos. I don't see any construction photos. All right, but I don't have any prepared photos. But you certainly can get an idea in an image. And the truth tells us what the truth tells us. How long does it take to construct 1 mile of a railroad from scratch?
The time it takes to construct 1 mile of railroad can vary widely.
Average.
On average, constructing 1 mile
That's a
of
pretty general
railroad from
question.
scratch can take anywhere from a few weeks to several months, depending on
All right,
factors.
we'll say 3 months. All right, so if 250,000 times 3 months, how many years is that?
250,000 miles at 3 months per mile would be 750,000 months. Dividing that by 12 gives us about 62,500 years.
I did that. I asked that question wrong. All right, so 250,000 miles of railroad track was constructed before the year 1900. Confirm?
Actually, by 1900,
Or 1917, 1920. 250,000, right?
yes, the milestone
That's
of
fantastic. All right, great. So if it takes me, let's say, 2.5 months to construct 1 mile of railroad, takes me that long. How long does it take me to construct 250,000 miles of that said railroad?
If it takes 2.5 months to construct 1 mile of railroad, constructing 250,000 miles would take 625,000 months. So in years, that's about 52,083 years.
That's not true. All right, so what? Everyone's working together, though. I get it. Guys, am I doing this wrong in the chat here in the comments? Please comment on this part of the live. All right, so let's say I'm going to construct railroads all the way straight in one line, all the way. It takes me 1 month to construct a mile, right? That sounds cool. Like, right? I think that's fair. And then, so 250,000 months. How many years is 250,000 months?
250,000 months is approximately 20,833 years.
20,000 years. Okay. So you sure that can't be right?
Let's
You're telling
correct.
me that if I could build a mile of railroad, a mile a month. Okay, let me change my mind. I'm wicked good at this by now. I can build a mile of railroad in a day now. So if I'm going to build 250,000 miles and I can build a mile in one day, how many years is that?
If you could build 1 mile of railroad in one day, constructing 250,000 miles would take 250,000 days. That's about 684 years.
If I could build 1 mile of railroad a day, my company, boom, there it is. And it was 250,000 miles of that constructed day. Every day I'm building one. 250,000 days is how many years? That was not good. Okay, so we are saying that 250,000 miles at construction, if I could do 1 mile of railroad construction a day, would take how many years?
It would take about 684 years to construct
So
200.
684 years to construct that amount of railroad if I could construct 1 mile of that a day. That's good to know. So we're going to say that the majority of this construction was done for the railroads we know by 1920 and some in the early 1800s. But let's be fair and say a period of 75 years. So, how many miles of railroad would I have to construct daily in order to have that number be 75 years comparatively?
To construct 250,000 miles of railroad over 75 years, you'd need to build about 3,333 miles per year. That breaks down to roughly 9.1 miles per day.
How many miles would need to be constructed a day? What was that answer, the first answer?
Approximately 9.1 miles would need to be constructed per day to achieve 250,000 miles in 75 years.
Okay, so that's kind of comparable to North America's construction of 250,000 miles of railroad constructed track by 1920. Is that just the United States or is that including Canada? That 250,000 mile number?
The 250,000 mile figure typically refers to the total railroad track mileage in North America.
Right. All right then. So yeah, so we're assuming that during that time period of major construction of the railroads in history and textbooks that was going on and that happened in that time frame. How long would it take a company today to build 9 miles? Could they do it in a day? Is that, that's where we're at. We could look at it this way. So that 250,000, let's do a different math problem. I'm going to shut you off and turn you back on. Thank you guys for being here and joining me. This is part 2, and we're doing a little breakdancing with AI. Hi there.
Hi there.
Let's do some math. All right. So 250,000 miles of railroads were constructed in North America before 1920. Let's figure out how much rather that weighed, the steel. It was all steel. How much did that weigh and how much in materials was that? And to be produced, it was predominantly produced, we know, Pittsburgh. So let's talk about that subject.
That's a fascinating topic. The weight of steel railroad tracks varies.
Oh yeah, let's just try and focus on giving some answers of the math. So 250,000 miles. How much is a mile of railway, the material it's made out of? I think it's always iron, steel. So let's get that figured. Then we have to figure out the spikes and let's start there. Let's go.
All right. Typically, a mile of standard steel rail weighs about 128 tons. So, for 250,000 miles, that would be about 32 million tons of steel rail. Keep in mind, this is a rough estimate and doesn't include spikes, ties, or
So
other
32 million tons of railroad weight was the...
Got it. With 250,000 miles of rail and each mile weighing about 132 tons, that totals up to 33 million tons of railroad track.
If we picked up all the railroads right now, picked them all up off the ground, and I weighed them, it would weigh 33 million tons. That's what he said.
Almost. The estimated weight would be around 32 million tons.
Yep, and factories that were pumping out 32 million tons before 1920 was responsible for creating those steel rails. What we got, Pittsburgh, were they #1 in all North America?
Pittsburgh was indeed a major center for steel production, especially in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The city was home to many steel companies and played a pivotal role.
That's awesome. So somehow around 32 million tons of steel. It moved around. Yep. So if we still have questions, guys, I certainly would love to talk to you.
I'm here to help anytime. If you have more questions, feel free.
Other than that, thank you guys for being here. My name is Eddie-O. And this has been Ed Talk. Thanks for stopping by. And I'll see you next time.